I think that the UK Flood Hydrology Roadmap is a really exciting initiative, and I'm very much happy to be part of this process and now the governance board. So today, I'm going to start by giving you a bit of an introduction to the governance board. Then Mark Franklin is going to go through what the next steps are in the Flood Hydrology Roadmap from the development to implementation. Helen Harfoot is going to talk a bit about the EA Flood Hydrology Improvement Programme, which runs alongside the Flood Hydrology Roadmap. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about a group that we are going to be advertising for very soon, called the Scientific Technical Advisory Group, and that will be a group that will basically provide advice on the content of the roadmap. And then we'll go to questions afterwards. So moving on to the next slide. So there's a number of members of the governance board of the Flood Hydrology Roadmap. Not all of them were able to be here today, but most of them are here for questions later. So the way it works is that the governance board contains a member from all of the regulators across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. So that's the Environment Agency, the Scottish Environment Protection Agency, Natural Resources Wales and the Department for Infrastructure Northern Ireland. And then there's also a representative from the British Hydrological Society, and at the moment that's myself, and somebody from UKRI as well. And at the moment that's somebody sitting on from NERC. And the governance board really takes an overview of the roadmap programme and ensures that it aligns the projects and the funding aligns with the roadmap, obviously providing an overview of the programme activities and commissioning projects when needed, and also finding and providing the funding for those activities, as well as in particular the British Hydrological Society is providing support in terms of access to the community and comms and things like that. So it's very much a sort of joint, or there's all parts of the UK are involved in this initiative. So I'm going to move on to the next slide and hand over to Mark.
Brilliant, thanks a lot, Hayley. So I'm Mark Franklin from the Scottish Environment Protection Agency. So the Flood Hydrology Roadmap is a 25-year vision. It was released in March of this year, and it's based around the realization that I think a lot of us have had, that we need to get flood hydrology right for the whole of the UK. That's getting the right investment and the right management of flooding, so it'll help with that. It will be bringing in the whole flood hydrology community together so that we can tackle the issues that we know about with the methods and the data, get really great research and development, and get that all translated and adopted into practice so that we can actually use it to improve how we manage flooding across the whole of the United Kingdom. And it will be helping us plan for the changes that we're expecting with climate change and changes in land use and the transition to a net zero future as well. So next slide, please, Lucy. So we've not been doing this in isolation, and we came to speak to the British Hydrological Society previously, but it all started back before 2018, and in May 2018 we sent out a questionnaire which we thought about for a while, and we got really good responses back from the UK flood hydrology community on there. About 270 people contributed to that. Then we took the responses from that questionnaire and held a workshop. Again, really good attendance from across a large number of different organisations across the whole of the UK in the different sectors. Again, building on that, we pulled together an online survey, and again we had a really good response to that, and that enabled us to start work on the vision and get that finalised. off the back of that, we've done some work to prioritise and group all the different ideas and suggestions that we'd received from all that feedback. So we grouped it into around 38 different work areas and 11 initiatives, and I'll talk a bit about them. And then we've been developing action plans that enable us to deliver all the different tasks and outcomes that we need to. And they've been consulted on. Like I say, we held the British Hydrological Society webinar back in March 21, and then in March of this year, we published the Flood Hydrology Roadmap after that was signed off by the governance board. So that's available to everyone. Next slide, please, Lucy. So I'm going to talk through some of the themes today. So the first theme I'm going to talk about is around the ways of working, how we want the UK flood hydrology community to work together. So we see this group and the roadmap as a lead voice for flood hydrology in the United Kingdom. It's a unifying voice about how we can all work together in a more consistent way, how we can have really consistent and clear technical advice and guidance, and how we're going to engage both amongst the community ourselves and across internationally, so that we can really improve efficiency and innovation. Next slide, please, Lucy. We're also realised data's close to my heart and fundamental to everything we do. So we want to make sure that the network of monitoring across the whole of the UK is funded. We've got the right technology, skills and capacity to monitor the UK hydrological environment. We want to make sure that that data is well managed, it's communicated, it's freely shared and freely available to everybody, and that we've got the data of the right quantity and quality for each application. And again, about having the consistency so that we know that we are collecting the right data and sharing the right data in the right ways for everybody. So next slide, please, Lucy. So the next theme is around methods. So really importantly, so the Flood Hydrology Roadmap, it considers all sources of flooding. So that's fluvial, coastal, pluvial, reservoirs. It considers both real-time design and planning for all sources of flood risk. We're driving hard to make sure that the methods and tools that are developed are open source. We want to make sure they're available, and critically that they work well for everybody, and they're supported and regularly updated, so the best methods are available. And we want to make use of the best available information. We want to be consistent. We want the data to be accessible and the methods to be accessible, and they need to be trusted. So the methods will be peer reviewed that are used as well. And we need to consider climate change and uncertainty and make sure that we include in uncertainty in all the decisions that are made around flood risk in the UK. So we'll be driving forward to make sure that uncertainty is accounted for when we're doing those. So next slide, please, Lucy. So the next theme is the scientific understanding. Basically, this is about improving our understanding of all the different areas of the processes that govern flood risk. And critically around this, there's always lots of really good science going on across the UK, but what we really want to do is make sure that state-of-the-art science and technology is transferred into practical improvements. So there's a big focus on driving all that great scientific development into something that's tangible and can be used practically in day-to-day application. Next slide, Lucy. So that's really great, laudable goals, but we need to break those down into some outcomes. So the first one's the strong leadership and getting the investment in UK flood hydrology. So I'll run through these quickly. The second one's to make sure that we've got the equality, diversity and inclusion. So we're talking about the whole UK flood hydrology community, not just certain sectors of it. We want to make sure that we're using, and it's underpinned by the latest science and evidence. We want to improve the relationships and the community across the UK, so really forming a strong flood hydrology community. We want to make sure that there's quality standards and they're fit for purpose across the whole of the UK. We want to make sure there's the right skills across the whole of the UK. We want to make sure that the models and data are freely accessible and freely available. We want to make sure that uncertainty is better quantified, understood in the models and the methods, and better communicated. We want to make sure we've got the observational network right across the UK. We want to make sure that the next generation of flood models are brought into use and are used operationally across the UK. And we want to make sure that we've got an improved understanding of flood processes, hydrology, and the variability of those across the United Kingdom as well. So those are the 11 key outcomes that we're working towards. So we move on, please, Lucy, to the next slide. So this is the bit now where I start talking about needing your help. So we've made a great start on this. We've got the roadmap and we've made a start on the strong leadership and investment. So we've appointed a governance board that Hayley talked about. We've started to work out who the beneficiaries of this work are, what the value is for different stakeholders, and we're working on the funding. We're about to set up the scientific and technical advisory group, which makes sure we have the right scopes and outcomes for our projects, and of which the EA Flood Hydrology Improvement Programme is one of those projects that's linked to it. So next slide, please. So a bit more here on the governance board. So the governance board includes potential funders from across the United Kingdom. It's here to help leverage funding, make the programme happen, and help the community and the practitioners get the roadmap going. We already described who was on it, but it's a 25-year programme, so the names will change of the people that are involved in this project through time. The scientific and technical advisory group we're setting up will lead and own technical delivery, and the governance board will be looking for funding opportunities outside government bodies to help. So from a scientific perspective, we've got an ambition to attract funding from UKRI for some of the research programmes. Next slide, please, Lucy. So just trying to show how it all fits together. So the governance board owns the roadmap programme. It tracks delivery on how things are going and provides leadership. We're going to continue to work with the British Hydrological Society, which is our link to the community. It helps promote the roadmap, get input from the hydrological community and from different practitioners. The UK Flood Hydrology community will provide the members of the scientific and technical advisory group, which we're going to talk a bit about later, and the scientific and technical advisory group will be making sure that we're working on the right things and the right outcomes. And as I say, there'll be a number of different projects which the scientific and technical advisory group will be advising on, things like the EA Flood Hydrology Improvements Programme, which Helen's going to talk about next. So I'll hand over to Helen now.
Thanks, Mark. Afternoon, everyone. I'm Helen Harfoot, and I'm the lead hydrologist for the Environment Agency's Flood Hydrology Improvements Programme. And in the next few minutes, I'm aiming to answer these three questions: who we are, what we are doing, and how you can get involved. Next slide, please. So the Flood Hydrology Improvements Programme is the Environment Agency's contribution to delivery of the Flood Hydrology Roadmap. And we are a £7 million, 6-year programme aiming to deliver improvements in flood hydrology, both within the Environment Agency and across the wider community. And to deliver this programme, the Environment Agency has created a dedicated team of project managers and hydrologists. And we've spent the past 18 months establishing a team and developing an exciting programme of projects and also starting to deliver. However, the programme isn't just focused on delivering project outputs. We're also interested in creating new ways of working between the Environment Agency and the wider community, and also between the UK regulators. And then linking back to the figure that Mark talked you through, the project is governed through the Environment Agency, but as it seeks to implement actions from the Flood Hydrology Roadmap, it has and will continue to seek guidance and technical steer via the roadmap STAG. Next slide, please. For those of you familiar with the Flood Hydrology Roadmap, you'll probably recognise these wheels as summarising the actions for each of the 3 themes. We've got ways of working on the left, data in the centre, and methods on the right. And apologies for the small text. It's not critical that you can read it, but if you want to find out more about the actions, please, I suggest you consult the roadmap document on the .gov website. The green shading here just indicates where we've allocated project spend against the roadmap actions. And I think the key points to note from this are that we're only looking to deliver against actions against 3 of the 4 roadmap themes. We're not looking to deliver any actions within the scientific understanding theme. We're not looking to deliver any of the actions in their entirety. And this really reflects the scale of the roadmap actions, but also their complex nature. Really requiring the input of more than one organisation to ensure their successful delivery. And also that the majority of our funding is directed to delivering actions within the methods theme of the roadmap. So we've got around 20 projects currently listed in our programme, and the majority of the projects, especially in the ways of working and data themes, do focus on improvements within the Environment Agency. But within all of the 3 themes, and the methods theme in particular, we are starting to look to address actions from the roadmap that do extend beyond England and the Environment Agency. So rather than list all the projects, I'm just going to focus on some of the key outcomes now, which may be of interest to you all. Next slide, please. So within the ways of working theme, we are looking to review and improve flood hydrology processes within the Environment Agency, as well as look at how we can better collaborate between hydrologists across the flow range within the EA. We're also planning to work with BHS, regulators across the UK, industry and academia to learn more about the experience, skills, diversity and satisfaction of hydrologists practicing in the UK. And this will be via a skills survey. And then we're also looking to gather evidence on why we need to invest in improvements in flood hydrology. Next slide, please. Within the data theme, we'll be looking to scope and develop a data register, which will be accessible via the .gov website. The intention is that this will deliver a go-to source for knowing what data we hold, how to access it, and hopefully to improve understanding on issues relating to the data, the quality of the data. We're also looking to review how we quantify uncertainty in hydrometric data within the Environment Agency and how we might improve how we communicate this to users of our data. And we're also planning on making our sub-daily data freely available in real time to download via the Environment Agency API. And this will be for the full period of record for all our active flow, level, groundwater and rainfall data sites that are currently held on our WSGI archive. Next slide, please. Within the methods theme, we've just finished a project which looked at relative uncertainties in the modelling chain, and we're planning to use the outputs of this project along with future projects to better communicate the uncertainty that we all know is inherent in flood estimation. And this will be to benefit our decision makers. And then for the last 2 outcomes that are listed here, we're looking to work with colleagues from SEPA, NRW and DFI to develop new ways of working to create outcomes for benefit across the UK. So this includes benchmarking tests for hydrological models. The scope of this will be co-developed in due course, but we're expecting it to include evaluation criteria of both model performance alongside how it meets user needs. And then secondly, we're planning to consider the introduction of new to operation catchment-based methods that could serve as an alternative and not a replacement for current methods. We do not anticipate that the programme will have the opportunity to actually embed these new methods, but will provide an opportunity, a proof of concept, which will hopefully highlight the benefits that such methods could bring to operational flood hydrology. Next slide, please. And finally, how can you get involved? I hope that many of you on the call today were involved in the creation of the Flood Hydrology Roadmap. We are really keen to continue to involve external voices in the delivery of our programme. So one way we're seeking to achieve this is through the creation of a community rep role, and these are people who can review our draft scopes and deliverables and provide us with feedback. And I'd like to say a huge thank you to those of you who have volunteered for this role so far. We've been really grateful for the feedback that we've received. So if you are interested in being a community rep on a future FHIP project, please look out for calls to apply via the BHS mailing list and also via our webpage, which we hope to be on the BHS website within the next few weeks. Please also keep an eye out for our UK-wide skill survey and more importantly, take part. We're really keen to hear more about you, our hydrology community. And then finally, another way to get involved is via the Roadmap Stag, which Hayley will talk you through now.
Thanks, Helen. Right, so the Stag is another way that you can get involved in supporting and more closely supporting, I suppose, the UK Flood Hydrology Roadmap. Next slide, Lucy. So we need a Stag, basically, to provide technical advice and steer to the governance board, to help guide the implementation of the roadmap, to help shape and scope projects and scientific and technical advice, and peer review of project outputs prior to publication. And one of the first actions required of the governance board was to actually establish this scientific technical advisory group. Next slide, Lucy. And you've seen already, Mark showed this slide as well. And the Scientific and Technical Advisory Group, we're very much seeing this as a group of around 10 to 15 people with, and as I'll give a bit more detail in a second, some fixed representation from the regulators, working very closely with the Roadmap Governance Board in terms of reviewing and advising on the roadmap projects in terms of a scientific and technical capacity, but also providing links to the UK hydrological community and to provide links to the project governance as well. So next slide, Lucy. So, I mean, I've basically said a lot of these already. But I think really we're looking for people to provide this scientific and technical support to the governance board around the priorities in the roadmap, and particularly thinking about opportunities to influence funded research, which can be taken up by the governance board, to assist with the promotion of new tools, methods and development of guidance, to facilitate this broader engagement with stakeholders, to obviously look at supporting projects and identifying and reviewing projects after they happen as well. Next slide, Lucy. So we've got a list of people here really who we envisage being part of the Stag. And in particular, just to stress that basically we're looking for anyone involved in operational hydrology or bringing increased scientific understanding into practice across all sources of flooding. So we're looking for a wide range of expertise here. And we're not just looking for established, the usual suspects, although very welcome as well, but we're also looking for early career people and people who haven't been involved in this type of thing before. So again, we're going to have representation from the UK regulators, from the Met Office, the lead local flood authorities, the water companies, consultancy practitioners, academia, early career, as I say, and others, for example, environmental organisations and charities, infrastructure providers, for example, reservoir operators, insurance, emergency responders, etc. Next slide, Lucy. We will have an application process, and the governance board will decide on the membership of the Stag, and that's going to be basically appointed based on scientific and technical competence. we're looking to apply, obviously, the principles of equality, diversity and inclusion, very much so, when establishing the STAG, and that's very much to ensure diversity of thought and background, as well as, for example, career experience, etc., as well as the sort of scientific and technical competence across the areas that are needed. Lucy, next slide. So we've envisaged a membership duration of 2 years initially, with an optional additional 1 year. And the time commitment required will be, there'll be at least 4 STAG meetings per year. Now, at the moment, the governance board meets 6 times a year. So there'll be 4 STAG meetings, and also the need to provide technical advice and review of roadmap projects as needed. So at the moment, it's anticipated the involvement will be about 1 day per quarter. Next slide, Lucy. So, I mean, I think there's lots of reasons to apply. I think it's a really exciting initiative. It's going to be, you know, the way we want to do flood hydrology in the future, and it's that path for the next 25 years. So why not get involved? It'll help to raise your professional profile in UK flood hydrology. You'll get to gain and demonstrate leadership skills. I think that getting that diversity of people involved in the STAG is really important to ensure a balanced approach to hydrological improvements across the UK. You also get to obviously network, to nurture relationships with key stakeholders and gain insight to the broader hydrological community and beyond. And most importantly, I suppose, you get to help shape the future agenda of the projects in the roadmap, and the scoping and delivery of major improvements in UK flood hydrology. Lucy, next slide. So if you would like to be considered as a member of the STAG, then we're going to have a website going, a web page, I suppose, going live on the British Hydrological Society website. Now that will happen by the end of this week. So that will detail the process for actually applying, and we'll also detail some more information about the Flood Hydrology Roadmap itself. But we'll also put out something on the mail base and on Twitter as well. And applications will be closed by Friday, the 16th of September. So we're basically doing this via an online form, which the link, as I say, will be on this on the website and mail base, etc. And the form should indicate your motivation for applying, along with the areas of hydrological interest you would cover, and also why you'd like to be considered, and how you can support the roadmap vision as well. What technical and scientific expertise you have. So any questions from anybody?
Hi, Lucy. Hi, Hayley. Michael here. I was just wondering, is there currently a list of the projects that have been funded, will be funded? Maybe I've just missed that, but it's something I'm interested in.
So maybe either Helen or Mark could say something about that, but I think it was on one of Helen's slides, some of the funding that's been allocated by the Environment Agency already for the Flood Hydrology Improvements Programme, very much so. Would you like to say something about that, Helen?
Yeah, I just wondered if the question was more broadly about projects funded under the roadmap, or specifically the improvements programme.
The improvements program initially, but yeah, also interested in others.
So obviously we have a list of projects, and we're just looking at how we can best share our projects and our outputs, and we're hoping to have a web page that we will be able to access via the BHS website, but this is still in construction. So if you want to have a list in the meantime, please email us. Lucy, if you could, I don't know whether you can easily skip back, but I did put our web address at the end of my presentation. So please email us and we can send you further details on them. But we will be making, we've got plans to make that more widely available in the coming months.
Thanks, Helen. Aha, we've got some more questions coming through. So, Paul, I don't know if you want to ask your question in person. Paul, Linda.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry, I'm doing this on the mobile and it's a little dodgy. It was maybe a daft question, but if you had a massively granular rainfall gauge network, thinking Scotland-wide, multiple thousands, would that be of use? That's possibly the daft question. The thing is, it's a future aspiration, but who best to speak to now about data formats and standards so that we design it properly? We're going to deliver it, but we want it to be of maximum use.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely would be of huge value. I mean, the more data we have, I think the more we can understand about processes, you know, the better we can make forecasts and all sorts of things. So it's really of great value. I mean, I think this comes in under the data strand of the Flood Hydrology Roadmap, very much so, about thinking about new data sources, data standards. I'm not sure exactly which part that comes under. Maybe Mark can say something about more about that.
Yeah, I think it's in the data bit. Hiya, Paul. So I think Scotland specific, Paul, you come talk to me, that would be good. But more widely, yeah, so in the Flood Hydrology Roadmap, we're looking at where the main sources of flood risk are across the UK, or this is the plan anyway, and then looking at what monitoring networks we need in order to support those in the future for all the needs that we've got. And then as part of that, the monitoring network, of course, is broader than just sticking kit out into the field. So that's about how we bring the data in, what standards that's in, how it's kind of archived and shared and made freely available. So again, a kind of theme that runs through all of this stuff is making sure we're targeting the development on the right areas of work for the future flood risk, and we're making sure that the method and the data and the technology is transferable and easy for open access and easy to share into the right standard. So hopefully that helps. Paul, thank you.
Thanks, Mark. We have a question from Duncan Faulkner, which possibly leads on quite nicely from this point, and Duncan asked, would anyone from SEPA, NRW or DFI like to comment on any plans they might have to carry out a programme complementary to the EA's Flood Hydrology Improvement Programme?
It's probably me to carry on going, isn't it? On behalf of all the devolved administrations. So the plan is, the EA Flood Hydrology Improvements Programme was already in flight, if you like, Duncan. So that's kind of ahead of the other organisations. The plan with this whole Flood Hydrology Roadmap is where it makes sense we do it together, and we do it kind of once for the EA. So that program is what we're working up now. So we started working on, out of all the different activities that are going on, where the interest is kind of cross UK, where the interest is only in certain parts of the different organisations, because we've all got slightly different remits and flooding issues. So that's being worked up now. So the idea is, Lo, that we'll come together and push that forward jointly where it makes sense. And we'll expand the scopes of some of the later flood hydrology improvement programme that the EA is running to include other parts of the geography of the UK where that makes sense also. So that's coming, and that's definitely the vision in the next couple of years, that we're doing that a lot better than we are now.
Great, thanks, Mark. We have coming back to Michael's question on the list of projects as part of FHIP. Ross Woods asks, have any of the projects in the EA's FHIP already produced reports, and if yes, are they available?
Hi Ross, we haven't yet got any reports that are finalised to share. but when we do, we will be sharing them through our webpage on the BHS website when we have that set up. But I said earlier that we haven't quite set that up, so you haven't missed anything yet.
So we had a question about whether the roadmap includes urban flash flooding from acid. If somebody would like to take that one.
Any of us can, yes.
Yeah.
It covers all sources of flooding. So yep, so urban flash flooding's in there in terms of understanding that, how we model that, what information we need to be able to understand that and work out how we best manage and respond to that risk.
Great, thanks, Mark. Claire Waller has asked a question that I was going to ask, and she says, how will the roadmap team work with NERC to join up funding for scientific research which isn't being progressed through the FHIP? And I was thinking in particular about the FDRI programme that's just been announced. So I don't know who would like to comment on that.
Well, I mean, there's a comment in the chat, and it is a standing item for the governance board, funding. We very much want to set up the STAG, the Scientific and Technical Advisory Group, as well. But you know, you've seen that UKRI are actually sitting on the governance board, so they have a very, very central role in this. And part of the job of the governance board is to actually identify, I suppose, you know, the priorities and for funding. And part of the job of the STAG is to advise the governance board on those priorities as well when it's formed, in terms of the actual roadmap itself. And then, you know, we join up with NERC to basically identify programs that they can fund to actually deliver those priorities. So I think that's how it's going to work. And yeah, obviously there's a massive investment already through the FDRI project that very much links to the roadmap.
Great, thanks, Hayley. And thanks, Steve. Cole's just popped the link to a note about FDRI in the chat if anyone wants to find out more about that. Do we have any more questions from anyone? I think I've addressed all of come back to all of the ones already. Yes, another one's just popped up. Will the EA look to incorporate the outcomes of the uncertainty in the modelling chain project into revised EA flood estimation guidelines and/or fluvial modelling standards? Thank you, Andrew. Question.
Hi, Andrew. That's a really good question. I don't think we'll be planning to put the outcomes of this immediate piece of work, because I don't think that it translates neatly into the guidelines, which are due to be updated. But I think there is intention that uncertainty will be something that we need to think about more in the guidelines in due course. So I think it's just the start of the discussion on uncertainty, and there are projects that will follow on from that, which may result in updates to the guidelines and the modelling standards.
Great, thanks, Helen. Any more questions from anybody? You can add them in the chat, or feel free to raise your hand and we can come to you. We had a question earlier about whether the PowerPoint would be available, and just to note that the recording will be put on the BHS YouTube channel, but I guess the team could consider whether they could share the slides on the BHS webpage, which will be coming soon. So when that webpage is there, we will advertise that through the mail base and online as well. So just watch out for those things when they're published. Another question here from Steve Cole. Will some or all of the FHIP projects be open to the whole community to apply for, or just advertised through existing frameworks?
That's a really good question. We haven't decided for future projects. So I don't know, I can't answer that, but I think we would like to perhaps offer consultants or researchers outside of the normal frameworks, but no, we haven't made any decisions. Sorry, I can't answer that one more clearly.
Thanks. So that, Helen, any other questions? So in the chat, Crystal has just commented, I guess, in response to that, that we'll have to strike a balance on that one, and procurement and resources are in limited supply. So something to note, thinking about the any forthcoming projects. Nick, thank you. A question here for Helen. New catchment-based methods were mentioned. Can you describe what this means?
I think this is just really about bringing perhaps methods that are already in wider use, but actually just bringing them into operation. We're not looking to actually create a new method here. So this is just really trying to look at different ways of bringing different ways of flood estimation. We haven't scoped it yet, Nick, so I can't really tell you much more than that.
Okay, I wondered if it meant more at a sort of catchment scale rather than individual site scale, or
yes, yeah, that's the intention. So the vision of the 25-year roadmap is for a kind of a more integrated catchment model. So we obviously don't have anything yet. So this is just really about looking how we can progress along that journey towards that long-term vision.
okay, cool, thank you.
So seems perhaps no more questions. I would just like to say thank you very much to Hayley, Helen and Mark for giving today's BHS webinar.